Hey, we were discussing this morning on scriptable objects and like an inventory in a database, and I thought I would make something. I'll try to keep this small. If I were to create two things we need is a spot to hold a database, and now we could use hash tables for this, and no problem with that. But I'm going to show you kind of a nice, easy way where we can make it in a more simplified manner. So I'm going to just build a script, and we're going to call it our Scriptable database. So we're going to have a script there. Now I'm going to build another script at the same time. I'll put it somewhere else so I can find it again. Right, like more or less we have to, we'll have a scriptable object. So I'm going to build a script. We're going to call this database scriptable. Right, so here we have a scriptable object. Now this is just a base empty script, and I'm going to just delete all this crap because we don't need it. And we have a mono behavior. We're not dealing with a mono behavior. We're dealing with a scriptable object. So there we have it. Now we need a way to create the scriptable object. So we need to go above the class, and we need to say create asset menu. It should just pop up on its own, and we can give it a file name. So I go brackets and file name. File name, and that'll pop up with an autofill, and I'll give it a name, and we'll call it our stuff, and then I'm going to put a little comma there, and we're going to say menu item or menu name. Now we can give it a menu name. Now I can say our tutorial, and then if I wanted to do folders, I can go slash, and then I can give what the menu name is. So demo data thing. So and you can name those whatever you want, but anyway, so we have stuff here, and I'm just going to put in some we'll call it an ID, we'll give it a public float, we'll call it float-d. We'll give it a public string, maybe some name, and that's probably good. That'll get the point across. So I am now going to go into this guy. So what we want to do is, if this thing's going to be our database, now we could make this a singleton, and we'd be able to access it quite easily. You don't necessarily have to do that because we can put an FSM on this thing or whatever. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to make it singleton. So singleton is, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go public static, and then the name of the script, which is our scriptable database, and I'm going to give it a name of instance, and then in the public void awake instance equals this. So what's that saying is that there is only going to be one copy of this script in the scene, and we can access it very easily, and I'll show you how to do that. And we're just saying that this script here right now is this instance. So what if we wanted a dictionary? So let's use dictionary, and it's going to give us these little fancy little things here, which it wants two things: a key and a value. The key can actually be anything. In Playmaker, we use hash tables, and hash tables have to be strings. In the dictionary, when we're doing it this way, they can actually be anything. If you wanted to make it an integer or a float or an object, that's fine. I'll stick with the strings So that's the key, and then we go comma. Now we need a value. What is the value? And the value is going to be a database scriptable. Is our scriptable object itself. Now we need to give this dictionary a name. Our dictionary, sure. Now we're going to do one more thing, and we're going to say equals new dictionary. There we go. So we've created our dictionary just like that. Now we could from there leave it like that. If we wanted to build a get set style thing, we could add in say a public database scriptable, which is our scriptable object, and we can call it get data, and we'll pass in a string, something like that, to which then we would just return. So this is the method that we could actually call from like an FSM, and we could call the method of get data, and if we give it a string, which will be the key we'd be looking for, it's going to give us back one of our scriptable objects. So what would we return? We would return, we'd have this method go into our dictionary, and we would get this one. That's it. Now, what if that one doesn't exist? We could have if our dictionary dot contains key, this one, then do that. Else, return null, kind of idea. We could do that. That is an option. If you wanted to do a getter and setter style methods, that's a way we can do it. I won't necessarily use this, but it's there. Sorry, if you wanted to use it. So if this is our thing, the other thing is to also make this nice and easy. We could load our dictionary up, right? So we could say we'll declare a variable. Or do we want to do that? No, I think we want to do a database scriptable. Make it an array. We'll call it our temp list, and it equals resources dot load all, which will now need a path, which will automatically go into the resource folder. So we can say we'll call a folder called demo. And then from there we would need to do we need to tell it what type. So it would be type of database scriptable and bracket, and it wants an object. So that would be, you know what, I think that would just be, it would just be a bar. Well, I mean it would be, but I'm pretty sure it has to be an array. Oh, it is bar. All right, so we're telling it when on the awake, like very first thing that's going to happen. We're going to go into the resource folder. We're going to find all of our scriptable objects, and we're going to yank them into this variable. Now, once we have that variable, we could say for I equals temp list dot length. So how big is this array? Right. Just in case for anyone who doesn't know, it's like So I is just an integer, right? I equals 0. We're just declaring some random integer. Now, as long as I is less than the length of the array, we are going to increase I by 1, which is what the plus plus is. Meanwhile, we're going to be doing something in these little brackets. So this is how you loop through a array. Or one of the ways you can loop through an array. So all we have to do is our dictionary dot add, and we need to give it a key and the value. So we're going to go with, we're going to add the temp list. We're going to access it at the I, because that's where we are. We're going through the I of the temp list, right? And we're going to go, maybe we'll just use the name of the scriptable object perhaps for the key, or you could use a value inside the scriptable object, the ID or something like that. And then we're going to pass in the temp list, also the I, the scriptable object itself. And it wants to be recognized as a, so we have to cast it, because as far as it's a bar, right? So it doesn't quite understand. No, it should, because it's there, but whatever, it's stupid. So I'm going to have to cast it, which isn't a big deal. I just tell whatever type is in front of this. So now, when this script starts, it's declaring an instance. We can access it anywhere. It's going to go into our folders. It's going to grab every one of our scriptable objects that's in the resource folder under a demo. Actually, I think I need a slash in there. And it's going to add it to our dictionary. Alright, cool. So let's test that. So let's go into our resource folder and create a couple scriptables. First, resources, which I used it a few times. We're going to create a new folder called demo. And now anything we put in here, that scriptable object, alright, so our tutorial said, and we did that slash, so we have our demo thing. And we'll call this, say, test1, and we can give it whatever values we want. And then we can create another one. You can also just duplicate this and alter it as well. I don't know if that's a good habit or not, but it works. Test2. Right, and we'll give those some other numbers. Just some values, whatever. And here, whatever silly alarms came up. So now we have this. Now, if we wanted to make sure that is actually filling, if you wanted a different database on different objects, like maybe you have like a database on the player and something for a chest, you wouldn't go the instance route, by the way, because you can only have one of those. So we fill up our static, we load from our folder, we fill up our dictionary. So then what are we going to do next? We're going to debug .log, and we're just going to pass in our dictionary count. Let's do something like that. So it's going to be a count of 0, because it's being a pain in the bum. And it's weird, it's especially coming from a Playmaker perspective of not being able to see hands-on the data that you're working with. Like it's like you're working blind. Like it feels weird. But don't worry about it. It's actually quite common. Okay, there we go. So now we have 2. Right, so I did not need that slash. I guess that is just an automatic thing. My bad. Right, so there we go. So anyways, we have this database. So you're probably thinking like, okay, well, how the hell do we access this? So Playmaker wise, let's just make a quick little custom action. And let's say get scriptable data object. Name it whatever you want. And you can give it any kind of category. We'll say cool stuff category. This is our cool stuff. So, and this is the get. I won't bother doing the set because I don't want to make the video too long, but set and get are virtually going to be the exact same method. The only difference is one uses the word get, one uses the word set. That's really about it. The first thing we're going to want to do to make this easy and to make this universal for you, it'll just be that much better, is we could use a public FSM property, and this will be our data. We'll just call it data. Now we have more than one, so we can get sneaky and we put these little brackets here, and then with that we're going to need a public override reset. So data equals new FSM property bracket, and we're just going to give this a 0 in there, so it has a default. And then now the other thing we need to do is on enter, and we could put this in every frame as well. All we have to do is we make another one of those arrays, data dot length. So for each data dot length, so as long as it is, what we're going to do is we're going to loop through. So data on the I dot get value. And that's built in with Playmaker with that. Right? So doing it this way, now, so we get this weird action that looks like this. And you think like, what the shit is this? But now I can say, okay, we had 3 properties, right? So I'm just going to go like that, and it says, oh, okay, we have all 3 of them there. Now, if I wanted to, I could run a variable here, and let's just drag one of these in to make it easy. Actually, you know what? No, we'll do it properly. We'll do it the long way just to show you. So it's an object type. It's just what everything is. Now let's define the object type. It is our, I'm just going to hit database scriptable. It works a lot better when you use the right thing, right? Alright, so now we say, alright, let's go. Okay, so we're taking this one, that one, and now we can actually choose the property. I can choose the float, I can choose the ID, and I can choose the some name. I can take the string or the length of the string. Let's take the string. So let's say, we'll just call that the string. Call that the ID. I should call that float or int, I suppose. This is the float. Right. So if I hit play, this here will get nothing, because this has no data. So let's plug in one of those. Okay, now we need to reset that FSM, and now we can see we get our float, our int, and some string, just like those, right? And I could swap that out. I could say let's get test2, and of course we need to reset our FSM because I don't have it like every frame or anything like that. There we go. So now we have float ID and the string just the same. So we have an action now that this will technically work for every possible scriptable object you have out there. Let's set this to 0. But now if I set it to say 1, I can set it to 2, whatever. See how they say object type? And I can plug this one in, and now it gives me those same variables, just the same. And I could, let's see what I have. What are these? These are from a different tutorial, dictionary item, but it's a completely different scriptable object. And I can plug those in, and I can see they have different properties, right? The weapon string, the name string, the cost, you know, and I could put that in and grab a couple of its variables, right? I could plug in, oh, here we go, here's a different one. Item object, a scriptable object. Plug that in and we can grab the item to spawn, the game object. There we go. And it will give us this stuff, right? And if I fill this guy up now, so we can see it on the start, and I just hit play, and this one action will grab all the data from all those different scriptable objects, right? So here's, of course I didn't actually store any of these floats, so let's do that. We'll just throw some random names. Well, it stored that one, apparently had that one there. There we go. Right, so it's going through these scriptables and it's grabbing all the properties, and these are well, those two are the same, but there's 3 different types of scriptable objects. I'm able to access everything on them with this one little action, and you could literally build almost this exact same action and do the set value as well. It would work virtually the same. So now we have an action to get all the data we could possibly want off a scriptable object. We also have a system here that is a database of scriptable objects. So now we just need to get something from here. So let's build a little action. Get object from database, and this will be, we're going to put this in our same cool stuff category. This is also cool stuff. Dang nabbit. Say, okay, we use a string if I remember right. So let's use public FSM string. I'm gonna wait for my thing to catch up. Public FSM string. Get this one, and then it's going to return a public FSM object. We can call it return value, and we could define what type of object that is. We don't have to, but we could. We could say object type of, and we know that is a database scriptable, right? So all we have to do now is, let's just give ourselves a little bit of space, roll up our sleeves and go and so our scriptable database, that's the name of the script, and it's a static, so I can now do this. I now have full access to it, just like that. So let's say, now we could do the get data method, right? I go like this, and we could literally pass in a string. Oh, look that one up. Like that, and this thing will actually give us, so we would have to have like a database scriptable, we'll call it D equals this, right? And that's totally viable. That's calling this method using a string to go through and get us our thing that we're using the getter value. Right now we don't have to do that. We don't have to use the getter value. We could just use the dictionary itself. Now, to use the dictionary itself, it would have to be public. And no, it's not going to make it show up in the inspector. Sorry. So let's do instance dot our dictionary, and we know, not those, we use the square brackets, that we can do the get this one dot value, which is more or less the same type of idea. Now we probably want to run a check above it to see if it contains, because you don't want to throw errors, right? So we could go copy, paste, dot contains key, get this one, dot value, right? So that would have to be in an if statement though, not just a mosquito flying around me. If this do that. There we go. So returned value dot value equals D. There we go. We actually have to fill our variable to actually use it, right? So now we'll have that dramatic moment again, that moment of truth, the moment we've all been waiting for. If I hit this button, does this data get filled? Ba-doop. Yes, it does. Just like that. Right? So there we have something 5.1, right? All that same data. Right? And if I change this to test 2 and just tell this guy to restart, ba-doop. There we go. There's all that data. So the beauty part of this is I can make, if I'm making an inventory system or whatever, something, I can just dump things into this folder as I make them. It's all these scriptable objects with all this frickin' data. You can put icons and sprites and whatever in here. I never have to worry about it inside game because it's all being held into this dictionary automatically on start. It pulls it from the resource folder, from that folder, fills up the thing, and now we have two little simple clean little actions, one that can be used for any scriptable object, big bonus, and we can just pull from it anywhere because it is a static reference, so we only ever need one of those in our scene and it's good. That's it. It's laughing, right? But anyways, there's just some information on dealing with scriptable objects with Playmaker. Talk to you later.